The air shimmered with heat, bending the distant horizon into wavering, liquid shapes. Karoo's chest heaved as he ran, bare feet striking the baked earth in a rhythm that matched the hammering in his skull. Ahead, an antelope darted through the tall, sun-browned grass, its white tail flashing like a challenge. Every breath tasted of dust and desperation. He knew if he didn't bring something back today, the camp would meet another night, with hollow stomachs and restless eyes. The sun was high, the shadows small, and each step sent a sharp ache climbing up his calves. He ignored it. Hunger had burned away the luxury of weakness long ago. He could almost feel the weight of the tribe's need pressing between his shoulder blades, pushing him forward. His younger brother's face flashed in his mind, thinner each season until, one morning, the breathing simply stopped. Karoo had not wept in front of the others, but the image haunted every chase, every hunt, every quiet night under the stars. The antelope veered toward a cluster of acacia trees, the kind whose thorns could tear skin to ribbons. Karoo followed, ducking and weaving, listening to the pounding of hooves fade into the distance. The grass whispered secrets he couldn't afford to stop and hear. He slowed only when the animal's trail vanished in the maze of shadows. Sweat trickled down his back, carrying with it the grit of the day's dust. He stood still, letting his breathing calm, scanning the earth for the smallest clue, an overturned pebble, a crushed stem. The scent of something else drifted to him, faint but distinct, decay, faintly sweet and sour, carried on the shifting wind. It curled into his mind like a promise. Meat. Somewhere nearby, something had fallen. He moved toward it, ears tuned to the quiet. A vulture's cry cut through the air, sharp and impatient, and when he lifted his eyes, black wings circled high above. Where vultures flew, there was death, and where there was death, there might be a meal. His stomach clenched at the thought. The tribe's daily fare had grown meager, roots hacked from the stubborn earth with wooden digging sticks, their bitter juice coating the tongue, berries gathered with careful testing, because the wrong kind could silence a man before the moon rose, insects dug from rotting logs, swallowed without pause, the rare gift of a lizard caught in the heat of the day. Sometimes, when luck turned cruel, they would break open the bones left by greater hunters, licking the rich marrow like children savoring honey. Karoo had been the one to push farther than the others. When the old trails dried, he walked new ones. When the herds moved beyond sight, he followed. His strength wasn't in his arms, but in his willingness to keep moving when others stopped. And yet even that had begun to fail. The land was turning against them. Rivers shrank to muddy trickles. The grass cracked underfoot. The game grew lean, quick to flee, quick to vanish. He stepped carefully now, each movement quiet, each breath measured. A shadow flickered between the trees. No, not a shadow. Wings. Vultures gathered in the branches, their eyes bright, their necks bending like snakes as they waited their turn. Karoo smelled the carcass before he saw it. The air grew heavier, thicker, the scent of blood and rot hanging over the ground like smoke. He found the zebra sprawled on its side, striped hide stretched taut over ribs that rose like curved spears. Its throat had been torn, the wound dark and wet even in the glare of the sun. But it wasn't alone. A hyena crouched at the carcass, muzzle deep in the torn flesh, its sides twitching with each chew. Two others lay nearby, belly swollen, jaws working slowly. One lifted its head, its face painted in red, and fixed him with yellow eyes. Karoo froze, heart pounding in his ears. The hyena's gaze didn't waver. It was measuring him, weighing the worth of a challenge. He gripped the stone knife at his side, feeling the worn handle press into his palm. He knew the risks. Hyenas could crush bone with their jaws. They could run him down if he turned his back. But behind him lay a camp waiting for food that would not come unless he took it. He shifted his stance, drew a sharp breath, and shouted, a deep, guttural sound meant to claim space. The hyena flinched, but only for a moment, before lowering its head again. Karoo stooped, picked up a rock, and hurled it at the ground near the carcass. The crack of stone against earth startled the nearest scavenger, sending it leaping back. The others growled, low and warning. Karoo's eyes flicked to the vultures above. They shifted impatiently, ready to swarm the instant the ground was clear. He took a slow step forward, The hyenas tensed, their ears flat, their muscles tight. Another step, and the largest one bared its teeth. Karoo's knuckles whitened on his knife. A wrong move, and they would rush him. Somewhere deep in the trees, a sound broke the tension, a dry branch snapping under weight. The hyena's ears swiveled toward it. Karoo didn't wait to wonder what it was. He lunged forward, crouched, and seized the zebra's hind leg, slicing quickly at the meat with his blade. The flesh was still warm in places. He cut, fast and desperate, until his hands were slick and the weight of the meat threatened to pull his arms from their sockets. The hyena snarled, moving back toward him. One darted forward, teeth snapping at the air, just short of his leg. Karoo staggered back, clutching his prize, and turned, his feet barely touching the ground as he ran. He didn't stop until the trees thinned, until the circling vultures were only black specks behind him. The bundle of meat dragged at his shoulders, heavy as stone, but the ache in his muscles was dulled by the thought of the elders' nod, the children's wide eyes. He would return with more than roots and insects tonight. And yet, as he crested a ridge, his breath catching in his throat, he saw something that made him pause. Far off, beyond the dry plain, a thin thread of smoke curled into the sky. Not the thick, drifting cloud of wildfire. This was different, steady, deliberate. He had seen it once before in the distance, and the elders had called it dangerous, unnatural. But now, staring at it, Karoo felt something else. Not fear. Not exactly. Curiosity. Hunger, too, but of a different kind. He shifted the meat on his shoulder and took a step toward that distant smoke, not knowing yet that the choice would change everything. Karoo's feet sank slightly into the cracked earth as he descended toward the low ground, the meat dragging against his back in a makeshift sling of woven grass. The smoke in the distance drew him forward, even as the sun began its slow tilt toward the horizon. Each step brought the air a little thicker, carrying with it a faint scent, something richer, warmer than the raw flesh over his shoulder. It made his mouth ache with an unfamiliar longing. When he reached the shallow ravine that marked the edge of his tribe's hunting range, he slowed. His people believed venturing beyond this place risked more than hunger. It risked the anger of other tribes, or worse, the unseen dangers elders spoke of in low voices. Karoo had little patience for whispers. Survival didn't wait for permission. He climbed the opposite bank, scanning the ground for signs. Footprints, broad, bare, and deep, marked the dusty soil. Not animals. Humans. He crouched to touch the impressions, feeling the dryness crumble beneath his fingers. They were fresh, not yet softened by the wind. His heart quickened. The smoke thickened, and soon he heard the faint crackle of fire carried on the still air. He crept forward until the land opened into a shallow basin. There, at its center, a small group worked around a flickering orange glow. The figures were lean, their skins painted with ash and streaked with sweat. A fire burned in a ring of stones, and over it hung strips of meat, sizzling and darkening in the heat. The smell was dizzying, fat dripping into flame, sending up bursts of scent that curled into his nostrils and lodged in the base of his skull. He stayed low, hidden by thorn brush, watching. The people moved with a rhythm, one tending the fire, another sharpening a stone blade, a child gnawing on a half-cooked bone. They laughed, low and easy, the sound strange to his ears after weeks of quiet desperation. These were not starving people. A sudden crack behind him froze his muscles. He turned his head slowly, expecting an animal. Instead, a tall man emerged from the brush, a sharpened spear in hand. His face was painted in streaks of black and white, his eyes sharp as obsidian. Karoo knew running would be pointless. He straightened, keeping his hands visible, knife still sheathed at his hip. The man's gaze flicked to the bundle of meat over Karoo's shoulder. He spoke in a tongue Karoo could not follow, short bursts of sound, almost like bird calls. When Karoo didn't respond, the man gestured sharply toward the fire. It was not an invitation so much as a command. They walked into the camp together, every eye turning to him. The group studied him in silence for a moment. Then an older woman, her hair bound in strips of hide, stepped forward. She eyed the zebra meat, then the stranger carrying it. She extended a hand, not to take, but to touch, as if testing the truth of his presence. Karoo unshouldered the bundle, letting it drop heavily to the ground. He gestured toward the meat sizzling on their stones, then mimed the act of chewing. The woman's eyes narrowed, but a younger man stepped in, pulling a strip from the fire. He held it out. Karoo hesitated, glancing between their faces, before taking it. The first bite nearly buckled his knees. The meat was softer than anything he had eaten, the fibers breaking apart with ease, the juices coating his tongue with warmth instead of the metallic tang of blood. Heat radiated through his mouth, down into his chest. It filled him in a way raw flesh never had. He swallowed slowly, tasting the smoke, the faint sweetness from the fat. He looked at them differently now, not just as other humans, but as something ahead. Fire was not just heat. It was a change in the world itself. In silent trade, he pushed his zebra meat toward them, watching as they tore it into strips and hung it above the flames. The woman handed him another cooked piece in return. This time, he ate without hesitation. Night was approaching, shadows stretching across the basin. A child yawned, curling against its mother. Karoo knew he could not stay. The tribe would be waiting, and if he returned with cooked meat, real cooked meat, perhaps they would see the truth. Perhaps they would learn. One of the hunters tossed him a sharpened stone flake, finer than anything his people had shaped. A gift or a warning, he couldn't tell. He accepted it with a short nod. As he turned to leave, a voice called out from the fire. He looked back. The older woman was watching him closely, her eyes reflecting the flame. She said something in her own language, slow and deliberate, as if she wanted him to remember it. Though he couldn't understand the words, the tone was unmistakable. Do not waste this. The walk back to his range felt shorter than the journey there. The taste of the fire's gift lingered, sharper in his memory than even the scent of blood on the hunt. He thought of how the elders might resist. Fire frightened them. It was alive, unpredictable. They would see danger first, not opportunity. But he also thought of the children, the weak, the hungry. He imagined their eyes widening as warmth spread through their bellies. The stars were beginning to show when he reached the ridge above camp. Below, figures moved in the dim light of the last embers of the day. He tightened his grip on the stone flake and the wrapped portion of cooked meat he had kept for them. If they rejected it, he would find a way to keep it alive himself. If they accepted it, everything would change. Either way, he had crossed a line no one in his tribe had dared to cross before. The smell of wood smoke clung to his skin, a whisper of something greater than mere survival. It was the scent of a future he could almost touch, and it pulled him forward into the dark. Karoo stepped into the circle of his tribe's camp, the faint glow of dying embers casting restless shadows across faces drawn tight with hunger. The murmurs around the fire dimmed when they saw what he carried. He set down the bundle, zebra meat still warm from the flames of strangers, and the sharpened stone flake glinting in his palm. The elder, a stooped man with eyes like river stones, stared hard at both. "What is this?" he asked, voice low but edged. Karoo crouched, unwrapping the meat. A wave of smoky scent rolled into the night air, richer and deeper than anything his people had known. The children leaned forward instinctively, their noses twitching. The elder's nostrils flared, but his expression tightened as though the smell itself was a challenge. "It is cooked," Karoo said simply. "Made safe by fire." Gasps moved through the circle. Fire was not for eating. Fire burned, destroyed, scattered the herds. Fire was a thing to watch from a distance until the wind carried it away. No one in their lifetime had thought to tame it, let alone put food in its grasp. The elder shook his head. "It will curse the body. The spirits will see it as arrogance." Karoo felt the words like a stone against his ribs, but he reached for the flake, holding it up so the moonlight ran along its edge. "I saw another tribe use fire," he said. "They are strong. They are not starving." One of the hunters, younger and restless, spoke from the shadows. "And they let you walk away? You could have been killed." "I brought this back instead," Karoo answered, lifting the meat. "Taste it. You'll know why I risked it." Silence stretched, broken only by the whisper of wind through the grass. Then a child's thin voice said, "Please." The elder looked at her, at the jet of her ribs beneath her skin, and his jaw tightened. Without a word, he nodded. Karoo tore a small piece and handed it to the girl. She sniffed it first, then bit. Her eyes widened. She chewed slowly, as though afraid the moment would end too soon. When she swallowed, a small sound escaped her throat, half relief, half wonder. The others leaned closer. Soon, the meat was passing from hand to hand. Each face shifted the same way. Suspicion, then surprise, then the faint glow of something dangerously close to hope. Even the elder took a bite, his teeth sinking into the softened flesh. He chewed, swallowed, and said nothing, but his gaze had changed. Karoo spoke into the quiet. Fire changes the hunt. Meat lasts longer. It fills you more. We do not have to chase every day until our feet bleed. He let the words hang. We can choose when to fight and when to rest. That night, he stayed awake long after the others lay down, sitting by the fading embers. He thought of the other tribe, of their easy laughter, of the scent of roasting meat drifting into the night. He imagined his people with such strength, not just surviving, but growing. The next morning, he rose before the sun, with a bundle of dry grass, 2 smooth sticks, and the memory of what he'd seen. He knelt and began to work. The elder watched from a distance, his face unreadable. The others gathered slowly, drawn by the strange, sharp scent of rubbed wood. His palms burned, sweat beading on his brow. Then, a wisp of smoke curled upward from the grass. A spark caught, and with careful breath, he coaxed it into a small flame. The tribe murmured, stepping back in awe. The fire was theirs now, alive, but under their hands, not chasing them across the plains. They fed it, learned to shield it from the wind, to keep it alive through the night. Karoo showed them how to place meat above the flames, turning it until it glistened. The first morning meal in memory was eaten slowly, each bite savored. The elder approached him afterward, his voice quiet enough for only Karoo to hear. Fire is a strong spirit, he said. If it chooses to stay, it will ask for much. Karoo nodded. Then we give what it asks. It already gives us more. Days passed, and the change spread through their bodies. Hunger still came, but it no longer hollowed them so quickly. The children's eyes brightened, their steps grew quicker. The hunters returned with smaller kills, yet they fed more people. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Karoo sat beside the fire, staring into its shifting heart. The flames licked upward, alive in ways he could not name. He thought of his brother, of how one season's difference might have kept him here to taste this warmth. The tribe spoke in quiet tones around him, laughter beginning to seep into their voices again. And still, Karoo felt the pull of the smoke he had seen beyond the ridge. Somewhere out there, others had already walked further along this path. The fire had brought them strength. What else might it bring? The flames cracked, sending a spark spiraling into the night sky. He followed it with his eyes until it vanished into the dark. A thought rooted itself deep within him. Survival was no longer the only goal. The world was bigger than hunger. He looked around at the faces lit by firelight, faces no longer dulled by exhaustion, but sharpened by something new. Possibility. From somewhere deep in his chest, a slow smile formed. Change had begun, and there would be no turning back. If this story moved you, his voice murmured in the rhythm of the narrator's thought. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Survival is a story we all still live.